Hi and welcome to yet another exciting episode of our online pastry classes. So like I said, from the first three pastries that we did, that was samosa, pillowcases and spring rolls. So today we have another set of pastries that we're looking at. So we're going to do two more other pastries, and like we did even with the previous ones, we're going to start with the dough. So what we're looking at today is pies and mini sausage rolls. Pies and mini sausage rolls use the same type of pastry and the dough. So the dough that we use for this is called puff pastry. So to make the dough that we call puff pastry, what you're going to need is 600 grams of flour. So that's 600 grams of flour that we're using for this particular dough. So we're using 1 teaspoon of yeast. That's 1 teaspoon of yeast. So we're also using 1 teaspoon of salt. We're also going to use 1 teaspoon of sugar, and we're going to use 250 grams. So that's 250 grams of butter. For butter we're using 250 grams. So the only equal ratios that we have on this recipe for this dough is 1 teaspoon yeast, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 1 teaspoon of sugar. So both the salt, yeast and sugar are all 1 teaspoon in ratio. So when you look at the butter, it's split in two. So out of these 250 grams that you're having, that's a whole bar, you're going to need 75 grams of the same butter that you're going to use for folding. So you're going to have 250 grams, but you need to reduce a 75 gram for folding. The other item that we're using is 200 ml of water, and I'll have to mention to say this water is supposed to be ice cold water. So the water that we use for this particular dough is ice cold. So there is filling as well for the pies. So for the pies there is a chicken filling, beef filling, vegetable filling. So for the samosas will be in detail when you look at how we make these two pastries. But we also need for the sausage rolls we need beef mince, we need black pepper, garlic and salt to taste. So you need the mince meat, which is beef, black pepper, garlic and salt to taste. So we'll come back to our working space where we're going to start with, and we're starting with the dough. So like I mentioned, going through the ingredients again: 600 grams of flour, 1 teaspoon of yeast, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of sugar, 250 grams butter, which we are going to separate to have another 75 grams that we are going to use for folding, 200 ml of ice cold water. So when you come to my working surface here, I have everything set. The essential tools that I have on the table is a rolling pin, teaspoons, a sieve, a dish for mixing, some cold water here. So I have my yeast, flour, sugar and salt. So all my ingredients are set. This is my mise en place for this particular class. So as we continue with this class, I have here also a measuring cup, which actually is going to be equivalent to the ratio that we're going to use to come up with the 600 grams of flour. So we'll continue by starting our process for making this particular dough. We'll start with the process of making this particular dough. So here's my sieve, my mixing dish, my flour here. So we start the process. Okay, so this is our flour. This is all-purpose flour. So we're using all-purpose flour. So that's a leveled cup. That's a leveled cup for flour. So that's 1 cup, which is 250. So 1 cup is 250, meaning half, 3/4 of the cup will add up and make up my 600 grams of flour. So 600 grams of flour is what we need. So I had that to the measure, and I have there my 600 grams of flour. So I begin to sieve this flour because I don't want to have any foreign particles in it. either from the factory or either just the storage that you'll be keeping it in. So we sieve the flour completely. Okay, so we sieve our flour completely, and there you have it. So I have some residues, I have to leave them out. So I have my clean flour here, well sieved, and I also have some more flour which I'm going to need for some extra dusting. Okay, so the next ingredient that we have on the recipe board there is yeast. So I have here a kitchen teaspoon. So with a kitchen teaspoon, I'll measure my 1 teaspoon of yeast. So 1 teaspoon of yeast has to be leveled. That's 1 teaspoon of yeast. Okay, we're done there. So we go to the salt. It says again 1 teaspoon of salt. So the recipe guides that we use 1 teaspoon of salt, and that's exactly what we're going to use. Leveled 1 teaspoon of salt added there. So all I'm combining here is all the dry ingredients. So the salt, sugar, yeast and flour are all named as dry ingredients. So you mix all dry ingredients together before you can add any wet ingredients. So what wet ingredient that we're using today is cold water. So I mix all the dry ingredients together. I fully mix them before I can introduce our wet ingredient, which is water. So all the dry ingredients have been well mixed together. All dry ingredients have been well mixed together. Okay. All dry ingredients well mixed. So all dry ingredients well mixed. We come to the water. We're using the same cup for the measure of the water. So it's ice cold water. So I even have a block of ice in my water to make sure that it's very much ice cold. So I have my cup, which should also measure 200 mils. So this cup measures 200 mils of water. So I add my 200 mils of water and I begin to mix the dough. Okay. The next item we're adding is our butter. So I always love to keep my butter chilled, because this particular recipe requires that all ingredients are on the cold side. This is why we're using ice cold butter. This particular butter measures up to 500 grams. 500 grams is the measure for this butter, but all we need according to the recipe is 250 grams. So this is butter cup. We'll cut it in half. So we cut our butter in half, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we cut it in half, that is 250 grams. So half of this butter gives you 250 grams. But remember, we also need 750 grams that we are going to use for the folding part. So we also need 75 grams for the folding. So the 75 grams comes from the same 250 grams that you have already. So you cut out that much. That should measure for the 75 grams. So the rest of the butter is poured in completely into the dough. And the reason why I start with the water, because I don't want to have a situation where I'm folding in the butter and the mixture is still cold and it begins to melt before I can achieve the kind of dough that I'm trying to achieve here. So this particular dough will be made to rest in the fridge for 10 to 20 minutes before we can begin the folding part. So 10 20 minutes before you can continue with the folding part. Okay, so just a bit of flour into my hands so that I not have the butter or the dough sticking into my hand, so that I'm able to fold it nicely. A bit of flour to dust off the excess butter and mixture out of my hands. Okay, then you continue with the folding of the medium of the dough. So remember, this is the same type of dough that we use for both the pies and the mini sausage rolls. So these are the two wet ingredients that I introduced to this particular dough. The butter is a wet ingredient and the water is a wet ingredient. Okay, so your dough will come out as such, but you still need to fold it and come up with layers into this particular dough. So a bit of flour dusted on my surface just to flatten it and keep it ready for that resting time in the fridge. So the resting time is very important because you want this dough to be able to be handled nicely when you're folding it and making those nice layers of the folding. Because when you start working on this dough now, it is a little bit wet. It will not give you the foldings that you need. You will not achieve the layers that you want when you start adding the butter to it. Okay, so that is set for now. So we'll rest it in the fridge for about 10 minutes, then we'll get back to our work surface and continue with the process. So if you have a cream wrap in your kitchen, you can just lay it and wrap it in there so that the resting process happens nicely. Okay, so you rest your dough, fold it, so your dough is ready for resting. So I'm going to chill this in the fridge for the next 10 minutes. Then we continue with our 75 grams of butter that will be pouching into the layers. So the dough has been setting for the last 10 minutes. So I take it out of the fridge now. As you can see, it's a bit on the side where I can fuse in the butter nicely. Okay, so our dough has been nicely set. Using my rolling pin, I'll flatten it out a bit. So I flatten it out a bit. Okay, and also to make sure that my surface is dusted so that it doesn't stick. The top as well, so all sides of the dough should be dusted. Flatten it out. Okay, so now we're starting to fold in the butter. That is the 75 grams of butter that we get to fold into this particular puff pastry dough. So at this point, the dusting is very important because you don't want your dough to stick. You don't want your rolling pin to stick up as well. So you flatten it out completely and you make what we call the 3 folds. So the 3 folds entail that your butter, which is the 75 grams, 75 grams of our butter has to be separated into 3 parts. So the 75 grams has to be separated in 3 parts. So the first part we use on the first layer. So we lay it out completely. This is what helps even when you are baking your mini sausage rolls or the pies. This is what makes the crispiness and the puffing of the dough. So we lay it out and we do our first fold. So we fold there and fold there. Okay, we turn the dough, dust it so that it doesn't stick. Turn it on the other side and dust it again. Okay, we roll it out. We roll it out in all two directions, that direction and this direction here. The moment it spreads, you collect your other portion of the batter and you spread it on as well. So that's our second portion, the batter. Spread it on. Okay, so I normally focus on the middle part because this other part still comes on and this part also comes on. Okay, dust it so that it doesn't hold, stick to your surface. Dust it also on the back. Okay, the top, we roll it out once more. So remember, the other layers at this point are also getting more compressed and the dough is coming out nice and perfect the way I expect it. Okay, as soon as it rolls out on this particular layer, I get ready to do my last portion of the batter. Okay, so that's the reason why we have to dust it, because we don't want this stickiness to come out. Not on the bottom as well. As you can see, it's not sticking, meaning the surface is well dusted. So the last portion of the batter is put there as well, and we apply it just as we did with the first two portions of butter. Apply it on. So remember, this is the final folding. So we fold it there and fold it there, and there you have it. Your puff pastry dough is ready. So from this point, you have to chill it either overnight or you can chill it for 30 minutes on a deep freezer and your dough will be ready. So at this point in time, I just stretch it to make sure that layer is well compressed into the dough. That's the last portion of the batter. So as soon as that happens, I have my dough set and ready, nice on all sides, and this is ready for both your mini pies and your mini sausage rolls. So at this point in time, we cover it and keep it either overnight in a chiller or 30 minutes into the deep freezer. Okay, so we'll continue on the other side with our fillings, or rather stuffings for both, so that we are able to have time to chill our puff pastry dough. So I wrap it nicely, and there you have it. Your puff pastry dough is ready for chilling. The dough has to set, so our dough has set. This has been 30 minutes of setting in the fridge. The cooler, by the way, not the deep freezer. Like I said, overnight you use the deep freezer so that you're able to take it out in time and be able to play around with it when the need arises. So like I said, we're doing pies and sausage rolls. So we'll begin by doing the pies, but we're using the same dough for the board. So we'll cut the dough in half. We'll cut the dough in half. So half we'll use for pies, half we'll use for mini sausage rolls. So I'll settle it here. That will be for the mini sausage rolls. So with my assistant chef here being handy, put the rest of the dough in the fridge so that we're able to use this one for the mini sausage rolls, then we can use the rest for the pies. Okay, so we begin. like I said, your surface is supposed to be clean, and this is a marble surface we're using, so we begin by dusting your surface. You rest the dough on, you dust the top as well, not too much. So dusting is also very important. You don't need to dust too much. Turn and rest your dough. With the rolling pin, you spread it out. So this is half the dough, and I'm spreading it out. I'm spreading half of my dough to make my mini sausage rolls. So this is puff pastry, by the way. It's very sensitive. The moment you just see any butter that we used, you just need to dust there and make sure it doesn't stick both on your dough and your rolling pin. So the dough is nicely being stretched here. So we stretch it to that kind of thinness and thickness. It's a mini sausage roll. We're using mince for this particular dough. So when the dough is nicely stretched like that, turn over, check all sides are nice. So we're using mince for this particular dough. Our puff pastry, we are using mince. With a mixing dish, we'll add a bit of our spices today. So what we have on the table today is salt, a bit of paprika, okay, so the beans is there, the dough is set. Garlic is an ingredient that we get to use as well for this particular mini sausage roll, but you want your garlic to be fresh. So me, I chose to peel it and cut it fresh so that all the flavor comes in. You love that goodness and that lovely taste to come into your mini sausage roll, so you love to chop your garlic fresh. Well chopped into the salt and paprika. So you can look at this in another dimension, and you can say I love barbecue, I love more of the beef flavor to my mini sausage roll, and that is exactly what you're going to add in there. You cannot add chicken spice to this because this is mini sausage roll and we're using mince, and it's beef mince, and the type of mince that I'm using today is lean mince. It's not the fatty one, this is lean mince. So I'll just get a portion of this, add it there, and make sure I incorporate the other spices, salt, paprika, and garlic is well incorporated. The salt is for taste. Remember, even the dough has got salt, so you don't want to add a lot of salt to your mince so that it comes out perfect as you taste after baking. So for the mini sausage rolls, there's no glue applied to the dough. All you have to do is mix, and that is well mixed, good for taste as well. Good for taste. I can smell the garlic because it's freshly chopped, and that will give me a lovely flavor of my mini sausage roll. So when you look at the mince, this is a portion that can accommodate the dough, and the mince is well set. So we begin. You just roll it out in a straight line. And check. If you have too much there, you can separate it again. Roll it out. Okay. So you check your areas, whatever you need to fill up, if you have spaces, you fill it up. So the mince is supposed to make that sausage that you want to see in your mini sausage rolls, but the dough is what covers everything up. So you make sure that the mince is well set. The mince is set. When using your clean hands, you begin to fold it. So you lift up the dough. You lift up the dough nicely until you separate over there. So you begin to fold. So that the mince is nicely covered. The flavors, the garlic, the salt, the paprika will taste after the baking time. So the baking time is only 30 minutes and it's under 180 degrees Celsius of baking time. So the moment you roll your dough and you've gone over, you can see the bottom dough is there. There's dough there. So the dough has to be cut. You cut the dough. You take out the excess dough. Like I said, for this particular pastry, you do not need any glue. So you massage the dough just to spread it a bit. Okay. As soon as it settles in like that, you know that you're ready to start cutting your mini sausage rolls. But you also need to prep the dough. As it's baking, you need it to breathe. So you make a bit of air spaces using a fork. You make air spaces using a fork all the way up to the end. And it's set. These can work both ways. They can work as your garnishing or your decoration on your mini sausage rolls, and they can also work as air spaces. But they have to go, the fork has to go all the way in until you feel where the mince is. So those are air spaces. You do not want to see a situation where this dough puffs, because it's puff pastry. When it puffs, you don't want it to burst. You want to maintain everything intact, inside and outside. So you cut out the excess. This you can bake as well, but I want to see the perfect cutting. So you can either cut on an angle or you can cut straight away. So I'll cut straight away, then I'll cut on an angle so that you can see the different cuttings of the mini sausage rolls. So when you're cutting straight to the angle, your mini sausage rolls will look like that. This is how your mini sausage rolls are going to look like before under 180 degrees for 30 minutes. Okay, so you cut nicely, making sure that they are well set. Okay, so we'll try out a different angle. Going to try out a different angle of our dough, so we'll turn it. We'll turn our dough, cut out the excess dough on an angle. So on this angle, you'll come up with mini sausage rolls that look like that. So when you cut at an angle, your mini sausage rolls will look like that. So this is another cutting with the mini sausage rolls. So we are cutting at an angle. And this is how our mini sausage rolls are coming out. So these are different shapes on your preference according to your client. You'll have these type of mini sausage rolls. So we are done with the cutting. We'll set them in an oven and we have to bake for 30 minutes under 160 degrees. But I'll need to mention to say, as we go further with this class, you will see the part where we introduce the egg wash. The egg wash is basically egg yolk separated from egg white. Mix it well together with a brush or egg wash our mini sausage rolls and they'll be ready and set for baking. So our mini sausage rolls are done. We're going to put them on the oven parchment tray in readiness for the egg wash and also the baking time. So we arrange them nicely, especially against each other. We arrange them nicely. So we can also use the same tray to bake the pies. So we go straight into making the stuffing for the pies. We go through that, then we come back to our mini sausage rolls, which are going to chill at least as we're doing that time. And we'll bake them at the same temperature, like I mentioned, 180 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes of your baking time. Okay, so now we're dealing with our filling for our pies. So our pies entail that we have to cook the meat, nicely chop it, because this is meat pie. So we have to chop our meat, cook it, add a bit of vegetables to it, then create our thickened filling and add to our pie. So what I have here is a bit of paprika, a bit of bisto, and some barbecue spice. I have here as well cooking oil, which I'm going to use to cook our meat. So we begin. So we light up our gas stove. Our meat is readily available, so I had to chop the meat in advance because that is our mise en place for today. So as soon as the pan heats up, we add a bit of oil just to grease it. So we grease the pan just so that the oil does not heat up so much so that the beef does not stick to the pan as we cook. So we'll add our beef to the oil. Okay, that looks hot. Okay, yes, that is hot enough. That is hot enough. We add our beef. So we get to add a bit of salt. Okay. A bit of salt to taste. Mix it all in. Okay, that is cooking nicely on a low heat. Add our paprika. So we mix in our paprika. That is for color and taste as well. So we add in our barbecue spice for that nice enrichment of the beef flavor into it. So what we have left here is our bisto, which we are going to use for thickening. While this thing mixes up with the spices, nicely the beef is mixing up. So after adding our ingredients, we are now going to make a thickener, and in particular what we're using is bisto. So with the bisto, we put 1 to 2 teaspoons of bisto. Then we get to add a bit of water. Mix it completely whilst the beef is still cooking. Mix it completely until it forms a nice mix, no lumps. As you can tell that bistro sometimes is tricky to mix, but you'll have to mix it completely until there are no lumps seen in the mixture. So to this mixture I added the bistro. At this point I have tested and I know that my beef is well cooked. I add the bistro, thicken it. So finally our filling for our pies is cooked and it's been cooled down. Remember, your dough is been chilled, so it's been in the fridge. So this is coming from the hot section. So when you're mixing the hot section with the cold section, you have to make sure the temperatures are right. So the dough is been chilling. The mince, I beg your pardon, your chicken, your beef has cooled down, your vegetable has cooled down, everything is set. Our half part of the dough has been taken out of the fridge and now it's ready for use because our filling for our meat pies is ready. So we roll it out. Remember, you have to dust your surface. So you dust your surface nicely. So you dust your surface nicely, the top and the bottom of your dough. With your rolling pin, you roll it out. Remember, we are not making mini sausage rolls anymore, we are making pies. So you'll have to make sure that looking at the size of the dough and looking at the size of the cutter that you are using. So today I'm using this type of cutter. So that's my cutter for the day. I roll out my dough. I roll out my dough to that particular thickness. So the thickness should look that good. To this particular thickness, you roll out your dough using a rolling pin. Nicely, you set it there. With your cutter, you cut out the round shapes. So 1, that's 2, 3, 4, that's 5 mini pies out of that dough. So you pull out the rest of the dough, making sure you don't pull out the cuts that you want. Pull out the rest of the dough, set it aside. Remember, this off-cut can also be used at a later stage, but at the moment we're only looking at the 5 that have nicely come out. So 1 teaspoon of your stuffing is enough to make a mini pie. So you press your stuffing right in between your mini pies. So you place your stuffing right in between the mini pies, like that. Remember, this is a beef mini pie, so the richness of the flavor and the name has to come from the beef itself. If it's a vegetable, the vegetables have to stand out. If it's chicken, the chicken has to stand out. So we get to the folding parts. Remember, you're going to need a fork for this particular process here. So I've got my fork there. So I would move it to a place where I'm not disturbing the other ones that are settling there, and I fold all the way, making sure that the stuffing is in between. So I fold all the way, making sure that the stuffing is in between and well covered. I fold all the way. So I fold all the way. So I look at the shape as well, make sure they are nicely shaped and even. Then with the fork, you dust it a bit in flour so that it doesn't stick. Then you press the edges to create that nice shape and also to compress the ending part of your pie. So you want it to be well compressed, then you want to have that nice shape coming out as well. So you compress the edges nicely. Using a fork, and remember you have to dust it time and again in the flour because you don't want it to stick. You just want it to do the job that it wants to do for you, and that is to compress and create a lovely shape of your mini pies. To compress and create a lovely shape of your mini pies. On to the last one. Compress and create a meaningful shape. And there you have it, your pies are ready. So like I said, both the mini sausage rolls and the pies, at some point they can be baked at the same time. So I'll add the rest of my mini pies to our sausage rolls so that we can have the same baking time and the same temperature working to prove what we are saying here. So the next stage that we have to this process is the egg wash. So the egg wash entails that you break an egg in a separate bowl, separate it. So the separation technique is just to break, hold the other piece of the egg there, and it nicely separates from the egg white. Then you have your egg yolk. So there is our egg yolk. So for these, I can only use one egg yolk. Looking at the color, it's nice gold, sharp yellow. So meaning the outcome will be a golden brown, nice color after baking. So we apply the egg yolk onto the mini sausage rolls. We get to apply onto the mini sausage rolls. So we get to apply onto them the egg yolk. This is initially supposed to help you achieve that nice brown color. So we apply the same type of egg wash onto the pies as well, making sure all angles are catered for around the pie. So you can see to say one egg yolk would manage to cater for all of the pastries that we have on our oven tray today. Okay, so it's done, and I'm on to the list, but not the last one. Okay, so that is our last piece, and these particular pastries are ready now to go into the oven with a 180 degrees cooking time, 30 minutes to 25. If you notice that any of them cook faster than the other ones, you can simply take it out of the oven, take out the other ones, and leave the other ones to cool and cook completely. So you notice that this is raw meat that is halfway done, so probably the pies will cook faster and the mini sausage rolls will take a little bit longer of time. So you'll have to stick your mind into the oven and make sure you're checking on what the oven is doing to your pastries. So on to the oven now. Our pastries are ready for baking. There you have it, after our baking time of 30 minutes and 180 degrees on our temperature. This is our final product. These are our mini pies and our mini sausage rolls, and this is the outcome of the entire process that we've been doing throughout the pastry classes that we've been holding. So these are the final results of what you expect your product to look like. It's been a pleasure. It's been your chef again, Chef Chileshe Msonda, taking you through your online cooking classes with pastry, and this is our final product of the day.